Welcome to Modern Sages. We are so excited. We're on season 2. We've had a couple of episodes understanding what shamanism is, the blessings, the benefits of journey work, the tree of life, exploring our cosmic or multi-dimensional self. And today we wanted to talk a lot about how we can control our mind and the power that comes within it.
Welcome to Modern Sages Podcast.
I'm Jen Gilbreth.
And I'm Candace Coons.
With over 25 years combined, we have delivered messages from beyond,
explored ancient healing wisdom, and integrated these profound teachings into our everyday life.
We are passionate about creating new ways of being human in the modern age by integrating the wisdom of the past with the present and coming into remembrance of who we truly are.
Are you ready to change your relationship to life itself? If the answer is yes, your journey begins now. So let's talk about what we're drinking today, Jen.
Yes, today we both just decided that we wanted to have a little bit more of a refresher, something very light and just exactly what we needed today. So we have cold distilled water with essential oil of lemon. And it tastes amazing, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I always have had a sliced lemon in my water. Of course, everybody has had that, and that's delicious too. And if you have that, you can do it. But I haven't really used lemon essential oil, and it is so good.
Yes.
It is so refreshing. I could drink this all day, every day.
Well, and it also, when you smell it, it gives you that aroma. It also boosts.
Yeah.
Lemon is just like such a cleansing mechanism. And just the smell of it like helps clear any toxins, even in your energy bubble and or in your aura, which we'll talk about in our next episode. But it's also really good for detoxing.
Yeah. You were saying that even parasites, people will use lemon essential oil to not only detoxify the body, but to also eliminate parasites.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
That is so neat.
Yeah. And it can also help with like, as you're digesting it, obviously it can help cleanse your skin. It can help make your skin brighter, detoxify the liver. So it's so amazing. And it just tastes phenomenal as well.
Well, I think it's so fun because I am addicted to essential oils and aromatherapy.
Oh,
you
me
and
too.
I, like
Me
even
too.
now we've got a diffuser on with essential oils. We love smells. But I haven't really used a lot of essential oils in my drinks yet. And so this for me is really exciting. And it's so simple. I mean, it's so light and refreshing.
2 drops in.
It was just 2 drops.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, this is something I feel that I need to start incorporating every day. It just makes it so easy to drink my water.
Yeah, because sometimes when you like to drink different kinds of drinks, water can be boring. So when you add a little essential oil into it, it's so perfect.
Yeah.
You want to know another trick of essential oils real quick? So if you get orange, it is really great for teeth whitening.
What?
So you'll just put some on. We have like Hello, or we have different natural organic toothpaste.
Right.
But you just put it on your brush with your toothpaste and you just brush it on your teeth and it's a teeth whitener.
And could you drink it in your water as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. There's all kinds. You could do like peppermint. There's different kinds for immunity
Well,
boosters.
you know how it's so funny too, because I was just putting this out in the universe, you know how things return to you, right? That you ask for. And I've been wanting to do some teeth whitening. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go like what I normally do. I usually get something off the shelves or something that's pretty harsh, like the bleach. But it also increases the sensitivity to my teeth, and I have sensitive teeth already. So I'm thinking that I'm going to try out the orange. This will be nice because it's a natural alternative. And then again, and it smells amazing. It's cheerful. It's uplifting. It brings you the present moment. And I'm going to whiten my teeth at the same time. Like, it does not get better than that.
I know. I'm telling you, it's golden.
That is so cool. I love that.
And some people will like make their toothpaste, however people make it with baking soda or whatever. But you just put drops in there and it's perfect for your teeth.
Oh, that's fun. I'm doing that. I'm doing that immediately. Thanks for sharing, sister.
Of course. I'm all about oils. We have lime and valor going, which is like cleansing and boosting. So it's just perfect.
Perfect for setting the stage for our talk today.
Absolutely. So Candace, let's dive in.
Yes.
This is an exciting topic, which I know in the wintertime, I get seasonal depression. And it's something that hits me pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of it also stems from not having the sun or vitamin D, all those things. But also, when you're in a bad mood or you're low, your thoughts tend to dip down too. And it's hard to climb out of that depression, that heaviness, that cycle. Yes. So I think this is a perfect topic, especially as we're going into the colder time of the year as well, for all of it.
I agree. Yeah, this is something we touched upon a little bit when we were talking about in first season, the multi-dimensional being. And we're talking about the 4 legs of the table, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And then when at that one part of that segment where we talked about the mental leg, we kind of touched upon how we embrace this particular part of ourselves when we're doing our shamanic training and teachings. And so I think I'm going to start there because I feel like it's good to review the basic principle of the kingdom.
Perfect.
To kind of get the conversation started, and then we can just kind of, evolve from there.
That's perfect.
Awesome. So when I'm working with my students, I usually refer the multidimensional self to the kingdom. Okay, to create kind of an analogy.
When you talked about this, I am so visual that it was like light bulb.
Yeah. And I feel like stories, just like all great, spiritual teachers of throughout history, they'll use analogies or stories to help you really like understand it, to help you kind of integrate the concepts on a deeper level. Yeah. So that's why I bring it up this way, because this helped me. This is like, if I were to explain like what this is, what's the best way to explain it. So this is how I talk about it. So in a kingdom, you of course have the king and the queen of the kingdom. And then there's the knight, and then there's the child. And then of course we have the beautiful kingdom itself, the landscape, the gardens, the trees and the rivers, and all the things of the beautiful kingdom that lies there. So when I think about the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, when I think about the mental aspect of our kingdom, and the kingdom is the life that we create for ourselves. It's how we co-create with creation, and we are responsible for our co-creation, what we create for this world or for our lives, right?
Yeah, everyone talks about that, and I feel like it can be, well, everyone knows that, but it can feel like such a foreign concept. And so yeah.
And you are in essence creating a kingdom for yourself.
Yeah.
What you experience in your kingdom, this is your life. What you bring into your kingdom, the life you create for yourself, you are cultivating a whole kingdom, a whole life experience for yourself. So the mind for me is connected with the knight. The knight does not rule the kingdom, even though a lot of people feel like their mind controls their lives.
Yes.
The knight in truth is not meant to control our lives. It's meant to be a servant. And we all need our knights. We all need our Joan of Arcs, our protectors of our kingdom. This is not shaming the mind. We need the mind. We even need the ego, and which we'll dive in deeper with that as we go on. So when I think about the mind, it's a servant. And the best case scenario, that night, of course, would be ruled by the king and the queen. And the queen is the one who creates the vision. She's the one that says, this is what I want to create in my kingdom. This is how I nurture it. This is how I support through that nurturing, loving, intuitive energy.
Isn't it interesting? I haven't pieced this together before, but we're using the analogy of 4 people, and we're 4
legs to the table
of a person. Interesting. I love this conversation. Keep going.
Yes. So, and also it can be related, the queen can be related to the divine feminine aspect that we all carry within us, right? The divine masculine, or the king within all of us, is responsible for taking that vision and bringing it into form, assisting in the support of that vision, that support of whatever is needed in order to manifest what that original vision was. And in an ideal situation, we would create a vision, we would implement a plan, we would set forth on creating this format or blueprint for what is being created within the kingdom that we live. The night is supposed to support the vision and the rule of the divine feminine and masculine within you. And it's not supposed to overtake your kingdom, because if it overtook your kingdom and it had no direction, it could easily destroy a kingdom. You know, you think about imbalanced power or non-direction, not rooted in heart space, and that chaotic kind of energy can come through and rape and pillage and burn down a forest just like that. And that's what our minds do when they're not directed properly through the divine masculine and feminine energy that is held within our heart space, which is the soul, the seat of the soul.
Which totally makes sense.
Yes. And so, but at the same time, you need the mind in order to create structure to figure out what needs to be done first, second, third, fourth, to implement the vision, to implement the energy of what you're trying to create. If you allow, and one of the things that the mind also is in charge of is all possible scenarios, making sure that where the energy is aligned, is it making sure it stays aligned with the original vision. So this is why it's so important to ask yourself this question, where your intention is coming from. Is it coming from a place of love or fear? Because if it's centered in love, then it is aligned with the king and queen within you. It is aligned with the soul. If it's not, then the night is taking you off course. The mind is taking you off course and taking you off of your path of alignment to create the life you really want to create for yourself.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense? And I look at the child as their emotional body.
Yes.
It's innocent, it's pure, it's full of energy. It brings beauty and color to our lives. If children don't have proper boundaries, though, then they can create chaos or havoc in our lives. But at the same time, the worst thing that we could do is shame our feelings and shame our emotions, because they are meant to be felt. They're meant to be heard. Yes. And to be seen, but it's being held and supported. Those feelings are just like you would think about a nurturing mother or father holding a child and allowing them to express their feelings. And so this is what you felt, and they cry, and allow them to feel and say, okay. And then after they are able to process, what do you feel like you learned from this? And what would you like to do next? And, you know, trying to support that energy and get them into the right direction that's connected with themselves. It's the same process we go through with healthy emotions when we support our healthy emotions, because emotions is the juice, it's the energy of manifestation. We need emotions in order to manifest. So if we don't come into right relationship, we can't manifest our lives. There's no juice, there's no gas to our vision.
That makes sense. And
to the things that we want to create for our lives. This is why it's so important to do the shadow work, but at the same time to understand that, you know, emotions are, it's not like going to the store where you can say, I only want to feel this and feel that, all the good stuff, but I don't want to feel the negative. And this human experience, you're going to feel everything.
Yeah.
And so coming into right relationship or healthy balance with your emotions also taps you into all the good stuff, which plugs you into your manifestations and what is really connected in with what you want and what your heart wants. And that energy is set into motion. Energy in motion.
Yes.
So it's like but those are the four legs, like you said, the four characters in the kingdom that are connected to the four legs. And today we're talking about mind, because we, you know, the ego, especially in the New Age movement, is kind of shamed a lot.
Yeah, it
right?
is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, how is it shamed?
Well, I think that we're taught that if we have any worldly desires, or if we have this ego, that it's just negative. It's a negative thing, you know. And when it comes into spiritual gifts, Like if you're living in your ego, from what everyone talks about is, you can't have a session full of ego, which is totally true. But instead of shaming that, like maybe sometimes that shows up in a session, or sometimes when you're having a conversation with someone, all of a sudden you're like, well, I know better than that. I want to prove them wrong. Well, that's our ego showing up, trying to over trump maybe the person around us. And we've all been around people who are like that. And it's not very fun to experience. But instead of making it bad or wrong or saying you can't have those thoughts, because confidence can also be mistaken from having an ego, is if you have confidence or you have trust in yourself, people can view that as you having a big ego or a big head or being too cocky or too prideful. When you find a healthy balance, you can still be confident, but you can still honor each other. We were on a podcast, we were on a podcast on Friday and even today on a radio show. But we were delivering messages. So people would call in and I channel their loved ones. Candace would connect in to their body, to their energy, what they needed. She was delivering messages as well. And our friend Dana, but it was amazing because that could be such a situation where so much ego comes in where you have to be the one trumping, or my message was better. It was clear. It made more sense. It was on par, but we all work together. We set aside that ego to just help bring the collective wholeness. And that's finding a balance, is saying, I honor you, I honor your journey, and I honor mine. And that's okay. That's part of it. It's part of the journey. So we can't shame our ego, because that makes us who we are in a lot of ways.
Yes, the personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Gosh, you touched upon so many areas of
You're
the
like,
mind.
I want to talk about this and this and this and this.
Yeah, because the mind, for one of the first things you mentioned, it can be connected with shadow beliefs or ideas. So you think of in the tarot, the mind is connected to swords, which is connected to the element of air, which is in charge of your thoughts, your beliefs, and your stories.
Yes.
And so when we have individuals that come in our life that trigger some of those unconscious beliefs that are tied into our emotional body and our shadows as far as our self-worth and things like that, because a lot of times the mind and the emotional body, they work together very closely, where the mind coming from the overall perspective, beliefs, stories, concepts, the bird eyes view of this particular issue. And then it kind of dives down and it grabs its prey, from the ground, which could represent, and like a lot of times you'll see like images of the hawk or the eagle grabbing a snake in its talons. So you think about those shadow emotions, going down and grabbing the shadow emotions and carrying them, giving you an opportunity to bring those shadows to light, so that way you can look at them and process them and transmute them.
Yeah, it's a good thing that we have that if we use it in the right direction. My mom, my whole life, she's very big into Byron Katie.
Oh, I
in
love
doing the work and how you flip it around and it is always about you, which I found very annoying when I was little.
Oh, I bet.
The older that I get, I'm like, that's so true. That's exactly what it is. And it's not shaming that aspect, but it's using it for good and noticing when that does show up as well.
So yeah, like one of the other things you talked about was, instead of ego shaming, their ego is not a bad thing. The ego helps shed light to ideas, concepts, and beliefs. And there are some that assist you and help you move forward on your vision, just like you were talking about confidence, right? Yes. Let's say, you did that beautiful reel on yourself, which I would love to get one
I
done.
Am Woman one.
Oh my gosh, it was so fantastic. For me, I look at, I'm like, yes, with capitals, YES, exclamation points all over the place. I'm like, yes, sister, go. But for someone who is being challenged, who is challenging their shadow of unworthiness, who struggles with confidence, sometimes when someone is standing in their power, which when when one is standing in their power, their ego is aligned with their higher self. The ego, the mind, is in support of the higher vision of the soul mission of that individual. And it's in support, which would give you more confidence, more passion, more drive, being able to see the bigger vision, being able to understand, keep clear about the direction that you're going with your life and the message that you want to share, the energy you want to share with the world. Those are all the beautiful gifts of the ego and the mind, and they keep you on track.
Yeah,
right?
They do.
But when someone is aligned in that way, and then someone else is triggered and their shadow beliefs about themselves and what that means, like, oh, I need to be humble. I need to hide behind someone else who is worthy of that attention or authority or leadership, or there may be layers upon layers of shadow beliefs that are in there.
Well, it's interesting you're saying that, because on my mission, I served in Nashville, and I'm not gonna lie, I loved it.
Oh, it was a fun place.
Pretty good. Not in a cocky way. It was, spirituality is where I thrive. It's just what I love to do. It comes naturally to me. But I always felt like I needed to say, oh, like, not take, people were like, that was so amazing, great job. And I was like, oh, it wasn't me, it was God. Every time I would just give that back up to God. And at some points that's really amazing to do. Yes. But I feel like that also sometimes can minimize, because you're putting the effort in. Yes. You're also showing up. Yes. And if you're not a conduit, then that can't work through you. Right. So it's also, you don't have to say, finding oh, thank balance. You, that's all me. But it was almost the point where it felt like I couldn't take any positive, I couldn't take any positive stuff towards me. I had to constantly give it up, which is great. But there is that fine line. It's like finding that balance, because then I wouldn't have confidence in myself. When in life, you need to have confidence in yourself to show up, or to be on a phone call, to do something. Yeah. Instead of always not giving yourself permission to have that as well. Mm-hmm. So I like what you're saying is like a healthy balance between the two. Because of course, being connected to the divine, God, your spirit, all of those things is so powerful, but it can't be everything if you're not willing to move forward, which shows you that having the ego is good in both ways.
Exactly. Because the ego helps you stay organized. It helps you stay focused. It helps create structure. So that way you can implement an idea, a vision, or into form. Yeah. And so you need the ego for that. If you need the ego to pay your bills, you need the ego to drive a car. If we don't use that energy in the right way, then of course then that's not healthy, right? Yes. But at the same time, we don't want to discount it either, like, because you do need it. Yeah. It's just about putting it in its rightful place. And like just earlier too, when I was talking about how, beliefs, ideas, concepts, which is mind, air, how our power and people standing in their power can trigger other people's shadows. If you can imagine a bright light being shone upon a shadow. Now, at the same time, even though it may be bringing up those things within them, which has nothing to do with you, in truth, if we feel triggered in any way, though, that still needs work. That's something that needs transmutation within us. Like if someone said something or whatever, respond in the way, and all of a sudden we take it on, which means we feel hurt or feel insulted, or
we make it about us.
Make it about us in some way. If we go in that space, then it is about us, because there's something there that's being mirrored back to us that is being called to be healed within us, right?
This is so good.
So I feel that it's like there's even a balance with that. It's like, it's a lot of people when in the new age movement, not only do they do ego shaming, but they would go, I saw a lot of spiritual individuals or energies go in the direction of saying nothing that is going on with you has anything to do with me. And it's like, well, I mean, there's a balance with that. You have to take accountability, though. And this is one thing that I love about the lessons of the mind as well. When you see things from an overall perspective, the eagle's eye view, right? And one of my favorite quotes is, I don't lie with the dogs, I fly with the eagles.
Oh, I like that.
Okay. So as a healer, You don't lie with the dogs, you fly with the eagles. And that means that you're able to pull yourself up and see the truth of a situation and of your life or someone else's.
Well, and I think that's good too, because it can be, if you're having a bad day or if you're moody or if things aren't going well, it can be easy to be like, what's going on in the star system? What's going on with the moon? And that can play a factor into it. But that doesn't mean if something's going on in the solar system that you need to be a total
that you don't take accountability. Yeah, exactly.
Accountability is everything when it comes to that.
Yeah. Yes. And so when you are in healthy mind and healthy ego, if something is being triggered in someone and it's triggering you on some level, that eagle's eye view will give you that overall perspective and say, well, what is this triggering in me? And what is that belief, idea, or story that I'm playing that makes it about me on some level? Like, what does this mean about me? That I have created, of course, that is a story, because really you're not your mind. You're not your emotions. You're not your body. You are so much more than that. You are eternal spirit. You don't need to go out and earn an award for your worth or your value. We've talked about this many, many times.
Yeah.
So when you're having those emotions and beliefs and stories, these are ideas. These are things on somewhere along this human path. There have been these ideas that have been created within you, within your blueprint, within your human experience, that is just calling you to look at it and say, what do you want to do with this?
Right.
What did you learn from this situation? How can you use this energy and align it and transmute it to love and use that energy to manifest what you want to create for your life?
Yeah.
Because you can. There's a way to look at every situation to gain the wisdom teachings from it, to retrieve the wisdom of that particular experience and use that diamond.
Yeah. And sometimes moving into that direction, sometimes our ego thinks that we have to have the blueprint or the answer, when in reality, everyone's tapping into the same universal truths. So newsflash, there's never, everyone's tapping into the same healing energy.
Universal wisdom.
Yeah. And so I think that's also important to know, as the ego can say, well, that doesn't work for me. I'm not doing that. That's not okay. But why not? Why not give it a try? Because what might work for you maybe will work for someone else and it might not. But if you don't give it a try, you're not giving yourself permission to connect into those universal truths. And you don't have to have it perfect or have it all figured out to start teaching or sharing.
Yes.
Because it's drawing upon that wisdom. And if you're always waiting to have the final answer, you're going to be waiting forever.
Yes.
Your life will be a big waiting game.
It'll be just a holding place.
Yeah,
for sure. And, this is one of the things we talked about on the talk show, because this is one of the things, one of the great lessons, one of the great ego lessons that I've learned from being a healer and a teacher, and this is what kept me, this particular lesson kept me from stepping forward for a long time. And it was my ideas around perfectionism and what I needed to do to earn that position, to be a teacher, to be a spiritual healer or teacher. And I held myself back so much, thinking, okay, if not only do I need to get all my ducks in a row personally, but I need to have everyone around me have all their ducks in a row. So I don't have to worry about you. So I don't have to worry about how they're doing this or doing that, or try to help them or assist them. And everybody's good. Now it's okay for me to step forward.
Now I can do it.
Yeah. But everybody is responsible for their own path, including your beloved, including your children, including your siblings, including your friends, including all of those other people. The sooner that we stand in our truth and rise up and share, the quicker that our lives are going to transform, and the quicker we're going to be able to share that energy with everyone around us. We can't be always waiting for someone else to do it. It's just like I've had a couple of sessions with people who've come to me over the years who are like, I don't have a support system. I don't feel like I have a soul tribe, and there's nobody around that is doing this or having circles or putting support groups together, this and that. And my answer is this: if no one else is doing it,
why don't you?
then it's your turn. The universe is calling you to do it. You need to create. And that's how I started with creating support circles for women, was because I couldn't find one. And I was like, nobody else is willing to facilitate or lead. Well, I guess I got to create one. Right.
Yeah.
And so I stopped waiting, and I just decided to create this vision in my mind that I wanted to create for my kingdom. And I took the reins and I did it myself.
Yeah, I love that.
And you and I have found this again and again, even with modern sages, with the different things that we do with our work and creating our own practice, private practice, which we both have, is that you just can't wait. Take accountability.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about mind, because mind helps you see the big picture and say, what is out of balance in my life? And if no one else is going to do it, then how can I create this for my life, the kingdom, so I can be in alignment with what my heart wants?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful. And I think that when we can step into that space, is I found so many times on the other side, is maybe someone at delivering messages, is maybe someone wasn't as proud of decisions that they made, or maybe they wounded someone deeply. And in order for them to have their full healing journey on the other side, they wanted to take accountability. And that just shows that this is an eternal principle, is something that if we don't learn it here, we're going to learn it on the other side.
It continues.
It does. And I think that that's also powerful, is that when we manifest, when we tap into that creative space, as I said, it's a law of the universe. So when we can still our mind and focus in and use it the proper way, we can dive into those laws, those universal truths that can really help impact us. But that's our spirit given right. Like, that is our innate ability within us. We just forget while we're here. And so it's part of who we are, what we came here to reclaim. And there's not only one way to do it.
Absolutely. Yes, sister. One of the things too that came in mind as you were talking is, the synergy that we're creating with Dana as we come together. So not only the synergy between me and you as we talk in podcasts, because it's a learning experience, right?
It is, yeah.
It's learning about like stepping back and saying, okay, what needs to be done? What needs to be addressed? What can I do to pick up my end for this bigger vision of what we're trying to create? And it's the same thing when we're working with a third person, a life coach, because individually we address those different angles individually in our own practices.
Yeah.
But when you're working as a collaborative group and you're creating a synergy, it's like a dance.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, she's going to be in charge of that lane, and I'm going to be in charge of this, and I'm going to be in charge. So now I'm feeling we're moving here, and then we're going to move over here for a bit, and then we're going to move over here. And it's like a pulling and a swing, and it's just an energy exchange that you just create a natural synergy. Mm-hmm. It's a combination of mind and energy and looking at and mentally looking at and saying, it's just like if you're coming into a certain job that needs to be done, and you know that there's certain things that need to be handled on this job, and people are working on this angle and some people are working on that. And you're like, you know what, I think I'm going to go over here and pick up this stuff over here because this has to be done too. So you walk in and you say, what needs to be done? What needs to be done in this particular situation in order to create the vision that we're trying to create? Mind helps you pull away from the emotional aspect of the ego and what this means, and say, what needs to be done in order to create this higher vision for the world? Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And along with that is we all have innate gifts that are lie within us. Mm-hmm. So if we spend our time comparing what we don't have to what someone else has, it's going to hold us as a disadvantage in our own life collectively and for those around us. And so I feel like if someone who's listening is struggling with, what am I supposed to do? What's my impact? Maybe if you're in a really low space, what are the things that are positive that you can contribute? What are the things that make you feel alive inside, that bring happiness, that maybe your sister or your brother or your loved one, maybe that isn't their strong suit? And it's not pointing that out and making yourself holier than thou. But at the same time, we all came here to live different things. We have different experiences, different gifts, different talents. And if we take too much time comparing ourselves, we lose the magic that lies within each one of us. So if you're in that situation where you're spending too much time scrolling and you're comparing yourself to everyone else, I wish I could do this, Rel. Why don't I travel? Why don't I look like that? How come my house doesn't look like that? Then get off social media for a while, reset your system,
Yes.
reconnect to who you are, because ultimately, at the end of your life, you are the only one responsible for your own life. And that's a hard truth sometimes.
It is. Oh, I love that. Yeah. One of the amazing books that was ever written was The Art of War. I forgot who is the.
Oh, I need to listen to or read that one.
Yeah. So it's an old ancient book, but it's called The Art of War. And one of the points that it had in that book, I haven't read it from cover to cover, but I remember reading this part, which I thought was so good. One of the tips in that book was that it's important to understand what your weaknesses are, to approach it with curiosity and awareness, that you shouldn't push it away, deny it, put it on the rug, because that becomes your weakness.
Yeah.
If you do that, what's important is that you look at the areas in which you feel that you're not the strongest or where your shadows are, and be aware of them and do what you can to work with them. But most of your energy is going to be focused on your strengths. So we don't want to deny the weaknesses and deny the things that we're not as strong in, but we want to really hyper focus on the gifts that we have and our strengths, because like you said, I mean, there's a place for everyone in this creation. There's more than enough to do. There's more than enough to express. We need everyone. We need everyone's angle. In order to create this beautiful masterpiece that we're collecting collectively or manifesting collectively. And so, yeah, it's so important that we don't get caught up in the comparisons. Absolutely. In fact, it's like, even like when I was working with you and Dana, like I remember consciously thinking, I'm so glad that she has handling that part. Like, I don't have to go there, that and I can focus in on the other thing, right?
We'd all be nodding like,
because we could feel that, but at the same time, we didn't have to do all of it.
Yeah.
And it felt really good to know sometimes that you don't, that you have that support, that you have those connections, that you can really support someone who just absolutely shines in that particular area and say, I'm so glad that they've got that. So now I can come over here and really focus on something that I feel like I shine at. And we bring those two masterpieces together. And then we create true beauty.
I think that's beautiful. I just was bringing me back to over the month of November. It was an extremely difficult month for me. Everything that I wanted to do seemed like it was falling apart. Everything was just shaken from me, as we've talked about.
Yeah, it's interesting how life will do this, right?
Yeah, it was like I was doing so great. October, I was like, everything's going so well. I'm so grateful. Everything's working out. And then November hit, and I just like hit really like a low, like a very heavy spot. And finally, I was like, I can't keep having this keep ruling my life. My thoughts can't rule my life. And all of a sudden, I was meditating and I was journaling, and I was just told, well, what gifts do you have you're not using right now? And I was like, oh, I'm not being a teacher right now. I'm not teaching. And then it was like, okay, we'll start focusing on teaching. And that's when I was like, I have all this information about a kid's course with spiritual gifts. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, I have all this ignited space within me. And so I started recording some videos, and it like, I'm in a whole different position now than I was even a week ago. And it was like, I just was told, what gifts are you not using? What's your positive suits that aren't showing up right now? And then just start doing them, and you're going to get your energy back to keep going instead of being stuck in this low or having your mind. Because there were times I'd be driving and I would just have this whole conversation going on in my own mind. And all of a sudden Curtis is like, what are you thinking about? What's going on? And I'm like, I just had a whole conversation for the past 15 minutes with myself in my thoughts. And it was heavy. And so I think even just knowing that your gifts are important, and if you're feeling heavy or if you're feeling stuck, or feel like your mind is ruling the world, what gifts are you not using, and how can you start using them as well?
Yeah, because it creates energetic blocks.
It does.
And when the energetic blocks happen, when we're not embracing our gifts, and this is one of the great gifts of the mind because it helps you gain clarity, right?
Yes.
It helps you gain clarity, helps you take a bird's eye view of an inventory of your life and say, what am I not doing that's creating this energetic block within me, which is manifesting into feelings of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we work with when we work with energy work. And we're going to be talking about that at their next episode. But that was so smart because when you pull yourself up and out, because when you're stuck in the forest, it's hard to see which path to take, right?
It is, yeah.
But if you can pull yourself out of the forest and see things from an overall point of view, then you can say, out of all the areas of my life, that physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, what is out of balance? What am I not addressing? What am I not integrating?
Yeah.
And your gifts and your creativity is really connected to the child within you. It's connected into your passion. It's connected into life force energy. And one of the passions that you have and gifts is teaching.
It is. Yeah.
So it's like, if you're not being creative in that way, then it energetically creates a block.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to feel that emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And, in the prior episodes, we talked about, what happened with us when we went years without truly being centered and aligned with our gifts and not utilizing those gifts. It created depression, anxiety, for me, like Tourette's syndrome, migraines and headaches for both of us.
Yes.
They were and eating disorders,
anxiety.
The list goes on. And as soon as we started utilizing our true gifts, which means we weren't hyper focusing on our weaknesses, right?
Right.
We were aware of them.
Yeah. Sometimes painfully aware.
Painfully aware. But at the same time, what created that turn was when we said, okay, I'm aware of my weaknesses, but I'm not going to allow my weaknesses to rule my life.
Yeah. It's a choice.
It's a choice. And I'm going to choose into embracing my gifts and my strengths, and I'm going to work on it.
Yeah.
And because that's the thing, is that even though people have natural gifts and propensities and things like that, it's still important that you fine tune it, that you practice. Like even the Long Island medium, she was talking about in her early years when she was really working as a professional, a story she had going to, it was some kind of like Bed Bath and Beyond, and there were sheets and there was a salesperson, and she was like connecting in with that person who had a loved one who loved, I think she loved doing homemaking and decorating. And so anyway, somehow she connected with this loved one, and there was a symbol for how she passed away, like what you're saying, the tightness of the chest and that kind of stuff. And, but anyway, that spirit kept telling her to say this one word. Like, I think she's like, just say this, I would prefer those sheets. So the salesperson came up and she goes, which sheets would you like? She's like, I would prefer those sheets. And so she knew that that was the one that she was supposed to be talking with. And then she felt the tightening of chest and she did all that. She goes, over time, I recognize that when I get that symbol, it's because this person passed from heart. She goes, but that was the first day that I truly put the 2 and 2 together. And she goes, well, I'm feeling this tightness of chest and this and that. She's like, well, she died of a heart attack. And she's like, oh, so when I feel that,
you have to learn.
That means that they died this way.
Yeah.
Right. So here is a person that we've seen live that just was
amazing,
over the top amazing. And even her, like talking about it, she has had this gift her whole life, but she still had to go in and fine tune it. So,
and she probably still does to this day.
And still does. But if you're hyper focused on your weaknesses, you're not going to have the energy or the time to not only focus on your strengths and your gifts, but to give it the energy that you need to make it the best that it can be in this life, which is what we're responsible for.
Yes, we are. And I love the shamanic practice. In the past season, we talked about creating sacred space and calling in the directions. We talked about the East. how the East is about seeing things from a higher perspective. As Canis, you just mentioned, it's connected to the sword,
Mm-hmm.
the
And East, the
air,
air, and the
the
eagle.
mind. And isn't that so interesting that when we can get so stuck here in our mind, it's like the shamanic practice of journeying, of clearing is like you get onto the eagle and ride the eagle up to see a different perspective, which is exactly what we need when we're stuck in our mind.
Yes.
Is it can be such a creative space, but it can also be our own gel. And so I love the shamanic teachings show you how to get outside of that, to see things from a different perspective. It just shows how connected that it all is together. It's so beautiful. I'm like, that's so crazy.
I know. And
it's beautiful.
And that is such a good point, because there are tools.
There are tools
that you can cultivate to strengthen the mind, to not only really understand its rightful place, but to use it in a way that serves you.
Yes.
And that's what we're really here to talk about, because it's important to be aware of both sides, because we live in the world of Maya, the world of duality. It's important to look at both sides, the light and the shadow aspects, right? But now that we're really focusing on the light, it's like, okay, so how can I use the power of the mind in order to create a life of beauty, to create a heaven on earth for myself? And a lot of the ways that you tap into this power is reflecting on your stories and beliefs around things. Because for one, we're here to have a human experience and to remind you. So even though you're creating a heaven on earth for yourself, and you can, you're still here to experience duality, and you are going to experience an adventurous ride. Right. Of ups and downs. But
Take
if you,
November for me.
But if you shift your perspective, that can change your whole reality.
Yes.
Right.
My mom has this quote that she's had up forever. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Exactly. So this is where you tap into that power.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that magically you're not going to experience sickness and death, and that you're not going to experience highs and lows, valleys and peaks,
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you understand who you really are, and you shift your perspective on what that means for you,
right,
then you shift your whole experience of that particular situation.
Yeah.
Just like, one of the greatest things we were talking about is the power of gratitude. And some people may be sick of hearing about it, right? Because we've been hearing about it for years and this and that. But that is a tapping into a power source.
Right.
And if you see gratitude from the right angle and the right perspective, it could change your life. It can become a tool that you use for manifestation, for healing and shifting, right? Because all of a sudden you're like, okay, what can I be grateful for? Because things really suck right now, man. Right? Just like with me when I was talking about how I cultivated gratitude during a deep depression.
Yeah.
I mean, it affected my vision. I was in pain from head to toe. My whole body hurt. I had Tourette's syndrome. I couldn't stop blinking. It was embarrassing. There was just certain things that happened. And what brought me out of it, it was like gratitude was like a pennies in a penny jar. Right. At first, it was just a cent, right? It's not much, just one penny. And so how I compare that is like, I'll never forget, like in my sharing my bio, the beginning of that journey, I'll never forget that beginning step. And I was at the park and I looked up at the sky and I looked at the tree and I said, I'm grateful for the color green, because there were leaves on the tree. And it was spring and they were bright green.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for the color green. And it almost felt like void of energy. Like at first I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to fake it till I make it on this one. Because I cut myself off energetically from my feelings, from my healthy emotions. And so that was a journey for me. But when I started getting it going and I started coming back to feeling, then it reconnected me back into my emotions. And the first thing that I did for myself was become my own best friend.
Yeah.
It's like, Candace, if nobody else understands what you're feeling and what you had to go through, I get it. Nobody, not one other person in the whole world sees it. I see it.
It's so powerful.
And you're being strong, or I'm proud of you for making that choice, or for being kind one more time, or whatever it was. Right.
Yeah.
So I became my own best friend. And then I gave myself approval. I said, thank you. Thank you for doing that, Candace. I know that took a lot of strength in you right now.
Right.
And so shifting from my perspective changed my energy. And all of a sudden, my life began to change. And so I began to see the power of the mind and how it can change the direction of where your life is going. Right?
Yeah.
So, but that was a lot of grace and miracles, of course.
So we're at 2:30. So we started at 1:36. So we have 6 minutes till we hit an hour.
So we'll wrap it up. So that, of course, in my life, what helped me understand the power of the mind, but it also was a lot of grace and a lot of miracles. And another thing that really changed me was the Course of Miracles. And the Course of Miracles, they say, is a channeled book from Jesus, is what they say. And it really is a bird's eye perspective of life. And so there were so many things that I learned out of that book. One of my favorite quotes out of the book was, "You are not your body, you are mind. I am not my body, I am not my mind." Oh gosh, what was that quote now? I went blank.
I'm not sure.
I am not my body, I am not my mind. I am still as God created me. It was something about, I am still as God created me. I am not my body, I am not my mind. I am still as God created me. But it was the separation of identity, of who you think you are, right? Taking you out of the dream, out of the forest, and pulling you out of it. And they say that book literally rewires the brain on a physical level. But they say that the Aquarian age is the age of miracles.
I love that.
And I love to see it from that perspective. That we're not moving into a more difficult time.
Which, if people focus on it, they can feel that way.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we're only here for this short time. What do you want to experience? Do you want to experience the worry, the stress, the heavy? Or do you want to experience the miracles?
Exactly.
It's
and
simple.
All perception.
It is perception.
It's
all about the mind. View. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So isn't it cool to really sit with that? Not only are we going into a time of integration and expansion, but we're going into the golden age of miracles. And that's how I choose to see my life. I choose to see that the things that are coming to me are for me. If things move away from me, they're not for me. Yeah. Whether that be opportunities, people.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're such a great example of that too. Sometimes we'll get on the call or get on the phone and just talk, and you're like, man, I had a tough time with this situation. So I did some journey work. I looked into maybe a soul contract with this person, maybe a past life, maybe some kind of regression that I've experienced. And you have these tools to move yourself outside of it.
Yes.
And I love that. And that's what this whole perspective, this is what it's all about in this podcast, is in hopes that people can find new tools to help them be more human in the Aquarian age, embrace that,
multi-dimensional,
and love that aspect. And you're just such a great example of that.
Well, you too, Jen. I mean, this is the thing. It takes a lot of courage to live a heart-centered life.
It does. Not always easy.
Because a lot of times we use the mind as a crutch to make excuses of what we have to do or should do, or what we think is like, oh, I just need to, shut my mouth and not say anything in this particular situation, or I really ought to do this or get this job or get that job, or serve in this way or serve and or a good girl doesn't do that. A girl, you know what I mean? There's all kinds of ideas, right? And we can hide behind the mind our whole lives.
Right.
And to not make excuses and take ultimate accountability for the life that you want to create, the kingdom you want to create.
Yeah.
And actually step forth on that path takes a lot of courage.
It does. I'm sitting with myself just thinking, what else do we need to share?
Yeah.
And I love what you said, is it's all about that integration. It's all about that self-understanding, that self-awareness. And I just keep feeling the impression that our ancestors do not want us to suffer. And they do not want us to be held captive to their heaviness,
the old stories,
or to their stories. Yes. And we can't blame our ancestors either, or our childhood, our past. That doesn't serve us. And our ancestors want to help us move that forward. And so I think this is a perfect segue into next week's podcast. We're going to be talking about energy work and clearing and all things energy. Yes. And we'll also relate that a little bit to ancestral stuff as well, of how we can clear that out of our system.
Yes. Fun subject.
Yes. So stay tuned. We would love for you to be a part of that conversation, to just continue on with what we shared, because this has been so golden. I love your wisdom, and I know that so many people can benefit from it. So thank you.
Thank you for watching Modern Sages. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We are so grateful for your support. We have an Instagram account as well as on Facebook. We have our podcast, which is the Modern Sages podcast.
And we are so excited to launch our Gifts of Spirit classes in our Modern Sages Mystery School.
Absolutely. We're so excited. So we're going to link the information below in the show notes for more information about our mystery school.